Hello, everyone. My name is David Kim, and I serve as the head of sustainability at the Bank of East Asia, or BEA, in Hong Kong. I regret that I'm unable to attend today's meeting in person, but I have prepared this presentation, which would give you an idea of how my bank is responding to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how we are preparing for climate change. As some of you may know, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted by all UN member states in 2015 as the blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and our planet. At the heart lies 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries across the world. Supporters of the SDGs recognize that ending poverty and other hardships must be addressed together with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, while at the same time combating climate change and working to preserve our natural resources, including our oceans and forests. Below the country level, a number of companies also see value in aligning their sustainability efforts with selected SDGs. According to a study conducted by the Global Reporting Initiative, in 2021, one of the top SDGs supported by companies is goal number 13, or climate action. Given the existential threat that climate change poses to life on our planet, most large cap companies and a growing number of smaller ones are making climate commitments. SDG 13 includes 5 main points, which, when applied at a company level, can be interpreted as strengthening resilience by managing physical and transition risks, creating a strategy that is in line with national and international policies, and building awareness of climate change across stakeholder groups. The main starting point is the Paris Agreement of 2016, which covers climate change mitigation, adaptation, and finance. As you may know, the aim of the agreement is to limit global warming, or the temperature rise, to 1.5 degrees Celsius between pre-industrial levels, or around 1850, in the end of this century. Before making any meaningful climate commitment, a company must assess its impacts, or in this case, the direct and indirect carbon emissions it's responsible for. For PEA, as for many companies, understanding and measuring our operational emissions has been relatively straightforward. Our Scope 1 emissions are generated by the fuel we burn directly, such as the petrol used in our cars and the cooking gas used in our staff canteens. More significant is the electricity we purchase to power our offices and branches, which are our Scope 2 emissions. However, through an initial screening we conducted in 2021, we discovered that more than 99% of our emissions are generated indirectly through our corporate lending and bond investment activities. This is perhaps not surprising for a financial institution, whereas our operational emissions would likely represent a much greater percentage if we were in the manufacturing or construction business. Nevertheless, to meet requirements of the Paris Agreement, we must adhere to a science-based pathway to achieve net zero for all of our emissions. PEA has developed separate net zero roadmaps for our own operations and for our finance emissions. We target to achieve net zero operational emissions by 2030 and net zero finance emissions by 2050. Some of our key operational milestones are in red and orange. For example, through facility upgrades and other efforts, we effectively reduced our operational emissions by 30% between 2019 and 2022. This year, we will develop a sustainable building policy and guidelines to help guide us to net zero by 2030. The bank will reduce emissions as much as possible before purchasing carbon credits by 2030. In blue, you can see some of our finance emissions milestones. We have started to measure our emissions in high carbon emitting sector portfolios, while we have grown our green and sustainable finance, or GSF, business by providing our corporate lending clients with incentives to reduce their operational emissions, which in turn reduces our indirect finance emissions. Starting from 2023, we have begun setting reduction targets for our sector portfolios to drive down finance emissions and assist our customers in their transition towards a low carbon economy. Our net zero roadmap for operations rests on 3 strategic pillars, including a low energy building pillar, or the hardware, which includes policies, guidelines, and deployment plans to reduce the emissions created by our building operations. We also have an institutional change pillar, or the software, that helps guide our building occupants to adopt a low carbon behavior. And the third pillar is carbon neutralization, which means that once we reduce emissions as far as possible, we will offset residual emissions according to our offsetting guidelines. Our net zero roadmap for finance emissions also has three pillars. The first is to develop a climate financing strategy, meaning that we will measure the emissions in our corporate lending and investment portfolios, develop targets according to a science-based pathway, and then integrate those targets into our business strategy and goals. Our second pillar is a customer transition plan, which will involve working with clients to understand their transition plans and to work with them to drive down their emissions. And the need to measure and manage a growing amount of non-financial data places new demands on our data systems. And therefore, we have also established climate and ESG data as our third pillar as we focus on improving data quality and establishing a platform for data storage, management, and analytics. In order to support our climate financing strategy, we have established a GSF framework to provide a clear methodology and associated procedures to identify and finance green projects and activities across the bank group. The GSF framework consists of 5 components, including a list of prohibited lending activities that we will not knowingly finance, a sectorization list that classifies sectors as green or brown, sector policies which help differentiate green and brown activities, a list of external reviewers that are authorized by our bank to certify deals, and an ESG checklist to facilitate data collection and climate risk. By applying this framework, we can determine if a request for financing is sufficiently green or sustainable to receive special financing. Our sector policies provide guidance to differentiate green and brown activities within the high carbon intensive sectors. We have set up a work stream comprising representatives from business units, risk management departments, and our sustainability department, which together have developed 7 policies for high carbon emitting sectors, namely the property development, power utilities, energy, oil and gas, metals and mining, transportation, construction, and chemical manufacturing sectors. These sector-specific guidelines provide detailed information on the classification of green and brown industries, qualification criteria for green finance, and requirements for external certification. Going forward, we expect enhanced criteria for GSF once the Hong Kong Monetary Authority's green taxonomy has been introduced. In Hong Kong and elsewhere, a great deal of attention is being paid to emissions reduction, climate risk management, and for financial institutions, the provision of green and sustainable finance. However, it's impossible to keep abreast of the topics that are material to your company's broader stakeholder base. And in the case of BEA, financial literacy has ranked high as a topic that's material to our stakeholders, particularly our customers. Financial education supports higher levels of financial literacy, which in turn supports greater financial well-being. There is no specific SDG for financial literacy, but elements can be found in various goals. For example, SDG 10, which calls for the promoting inclusion. Having consulted various financial literacy stakeholders in Hong Kong, banks can play an important role in financial literacy as we serve as the point of transaction where important decisions are being made. In particular, there's growing concern that customers over the age of 60 will get left behind as more banking services go online. For various reasons, including a lack of technological confidence and security concerns, many retirees prefer to conduct their banking over the counter. However, there is a risk that they will be unaware of offers and services that can only be found online. Relying on counter services also could be a problem for customers with mobility issues or as banks streamline their brick and mortar operations. In late 2020, we conducted a workshop with representatives of Hong Kong's Investor and Financial Education Council, financial literacy experts in academia, relevant NGOs, and members of our own personal banking division to explore how we could increase digital banking literacy, which was also lower among older segments of our customer base. The conclusion was to rely on branch ambassadors of similar age to approach target branch customers and encourage them to adopt our online banking and mobile banking app. We have deployed retired staff members and branch staff in selected branches with iPads to help drive more traffic online. As a result, the adoption rate of digital banking among senior retail customers Participating branches increased by 3 percentage points last year. So in summary, climate action and financial literacy are two of the major areas where the Bank of East Asia's ESG goals are aligned with the UN SDGs. Both present unique challenges, and we do intend to be setting goals in these two focus areas for the years to come. I hope you have found this presentation insightful, and I wish you all a successful meeting.